Welcome back to Wellness Wave Radio. Thanks for tuning in this morning to ride the wave with us. Each week our goal is to give you at least one suggestion that will make your life a little better. My name is Phil George. I'm a clinical biochemist, a certified personal trainer, and a health coach. Please remember, everything we discuss on the show is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. We got a great show for you today. So you guys, I'm assuming have heard of the new food pyramid. You've heard of the new, well, let me back up. Meg, why don't you introduce yourself?
I remember the old food pyramid a little bit from back in my elementary, middle school days of it being, you know, the healthy foods on top, and then the farther you down, it's the stuff you should have less of, correct?
Well, it was kind of the opposite of that.
Oh, okay. Well,
But you're right, at one end of the food pyramid were things that we were told you should eat more of.
Yeah.
Which was actually the bottom.
The bottom, the big one. Like the pyramid's at the bottom, and it goes like this. And the one at the top, you're not supposed to eat much of.
Eat a lot of.
So that's what it is.
It was forever ago.
And I believe, what was it, in like 1990 was the first, 93. I think it was 93.
It's gone on for a really long time.
No, I know.
Really changed it.
But, you can fact check me later, but I think it was 1993 that the original pyramid came out. And it's taken a lot of forms since then. Like, remember, we shifted to, there are a couple variations of the true triangle. And then in, I think it was 2021 was when we did the My Plate, Michelle Obama's My Plate. And then it turned into a plate. Like, we totally ditched the shape, the pyramid. And then recently, RFK decided that we were going to go back to the pyramid, but he flipped it.
It's funny you should say that, because a lot of people said that. Whatever they tell you to eat the food pyramid, do the opposite. Whatever the government tells you, do the opposite of what the government told you. I remember, Kate, when I was taking my test to get certified as a personal trainer, they said when a client asks you anything about nutrition, tell them to go to the My Plate on the government website.
Yeah.
That was it. That's not what most trainers are telling people. Just do what the government tells you to do.
I don't think My Plate was totally bad. I think the original food pyramid was not so great, but I think My Plate actually was an improvement for sure. But I mean, I don't know what you think, Phil, but I'm actually pretty excited about the new food pyramid. I think it gets a lot of things right, and there's a lot of myths that have been busted that we've been following for quite some time. I think now we're finally at a place where we're prioritizing whole foods, minimally processed foods, less sugar. The protein recommendation has made my heart very happy. So, for a long time, we had a lot of misinformation about how much protein we should be getting. And protein's not just important for bodybuilders, right? So, you need adequate protein for muscle maintenance and metabolic health and satiety.
Well, actually, one of the big problems now as people get older, not young people like me, but the older people. So.
Well, you're like a dinosaur, right? You're in a category of your own, so.
There's a condition called, ready for a fancy word, Meg? Sarcopenia. You like that one? Can you remember that? Okay. Sarcopenia. So sarcopenia means wasting away of the muscles. So some more fancy words. So people, as they get older, they've developed something called anabolic resistance, which means you just can't build muscle like you did when you were younger. So they're finding it out. So many people now come down with the sarcopenia, and they wind up falling down because the muscles aren't not strong enough to hold them up. And they found out that actually older people need more protein than a bodybuilder does.
Yeah.
Because they can't build it. So it's just the opposite. You need a lot of, but we need quality protein, right? You don't want to get protein from the poor cows that are in a giant thing. They're all squished together and they're eating bad stuff like grain with glyphosate. You want it from happy cows, right, Meg?
Yes. Happy cows.
You want it from happy chickens, right, that are walking around. And
is this turning into a kid show? Do we have puppets back here? Happy cows.
And Meg, so do you want your eggs from chickens that are happy walking around, or do you want eggs from chickens that are in a tiny place altogether? Which eggs do you want, Meg?
From the ones happy and walking around.
So,
From my neighborhood
yeah,
guy who sells chickens.
and Lester, right?
Or
Lester must
eggs.
have a ton of places that they have chickens, so you can get it from your local neighbor. And those are chickens that are eating bugs and things like that. And those eggs got a lot of omega 3s in it. So again, we're talking about meat. Meat is so important. And Kate, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they really kind of demonize meat back then?
They did. Well, especially red meat too. Was like if you eat red meat, you are going to get high cholesterol and you're going to have heart problems. You're going to have a stroke and die. Now we're saying, hey, red meat is actually not so bad, and we're prioritizing it at the top of the pyramid because we're realizing like red meat is needed for iron, B12, zinc, all of these really important nutrients. The problem was that there was the research that we had that showed that red meat causes health problems was because all of that research was done on people that were eating like crappy red meat in combination with other like highly palatable, sugary, high carb foods. So there's a difference between grass-fed steak and a McDonald's hamburger. So all of that research that had been previously done wasn't on like just red meat. It was like these people that were eating really crappy diets, but also just happened to be eating red meat. And that's where all of that misinformation came from. Like, it's just outdated research. The problem was never red meat.
And the trouble is, they can pick and choose. There's different types of research. There's what's called a double-blind placebo trial, which is the gold standard. Then they call an epidemiological study, which you're talking about. And what happens, there's a thing in studies, it's called an unhealthy user bias, which means, you're right, if a person, if they're eating meat, they're not paying attention to the government to begin with. They're riding motorcycles, they're drinking beer, they're doing all kinds of crazy things. So they say, okay, because you eat more red meat, but then they're looking at the other stuff you're doing, that you're doing all these other types of things. The other thing interesting with meat is it's interesting how you cook the meat. If you cook the meat too much, you do what's called denature the meat. You change the chemical composition. You release something, another fancy word, heterocyclic amines. You release these heterocyclic amines, and those are toxic, and those are basically toxic. So that's the reason why. It depends on how you cook the meat and the quality of the meat, what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it depends on a lot of things. The other thing that the food pyramid, I think, did right was we're now emphasizing the importance of healthy fats, which that's huge because we're finally busting the myth, like that 90s era of low fat everything. Like, oh, fat makes you fat. That's a huge myth. It's just not true. So finally we're recognizing you need fat for hormone production and nutrient absorption. And so now fat is at the top of the pyramid, which I think there's a caveat there.
Okay,
and this
ready?
So I don't, so like, yes, I think it's great that we're prioritizing fat and finally telling people it's okay to eat fat and you should eat a lot of fat, like it's good for you. But the one thing that's just confusing about the food pyramid is we have at the top of the pyramid, which is I guess now the bottom, whatever, we're supposed to eat a lot of butter and beef tallow and ghee, all of these things as healthy fats, which is great. Then in the cliff notes of the food pyramid, which if you read those, it says, but make sure that saturated fat is no more than 10% of your calories. And that I think is confusing. It's confusing to people because a lot of people, first of all, don't know the difference between saturated and unsaturated fats. Like, they don't even know what that means. But then you're telling people, eat as much butter as you want, but also don't make sure that it's under 10% of your diet. Like, the guidelines don't really explain that nuance, and I think it's kind of unclear for a lot of people.
I want to jump in, make it easy for the audience. Is the best way to tell between saturated and unsaturated fat. Saturated fat at room temperature, it's solid. Ghee, butter, all the rest of the stuff.
Yep.
And unsaturated, except for they call monounsaturated, like olive oil and what's the other one? Olive oil and the avocado oil. Those are monounsaturated.
Right.
Those
And
are
then
good.
coconut oil is saturated, right?
It's solid at room temperature.
Yes.
So all you have to do basically is just see, is it solid or is it
Yeah.
liquid? And
That's a good tip. That's a really easy way to tell, yeah.
but the other thing is that the big problem with unsaturated fat, you ready to do a little biochemistry? Mm-hmm. Okay. So saturated fat, all the carbon bonds are bonded to a hydrogen. Mm-hmm. That's right, they call it saturated. It's saturated with hydrogen bonds. Unsaturated means it has what they call double bonds, and those are very unstable. So what happens, it becomes what's called oxidized. Have you ever had rust in your car?
Yes.
Okay. You know what causes the rust?
Water and air.
And air, okay. That's what's called that's what's called oxidation.
Yes.
Oxidation, what it really is, it's called loss of electrons. It's losing electrons from the car. So the same thing happens with this unsaturated fat. It causes your body to become oxidized. So you're basically cooking yourself from the inside out, Meg. Is that a good thing?
No. No, I can
It's a little dramatic.
definitely not a good thing.
It's a little dramatic.
We have to be dramatic on the show. We got to get the point across.
It's just turned into a drama.
But do we see how that's confusing to tell people eat as much butter as you want, but make sure it's less than 10% of your diet? It's a little confusing.
Yeah.
Like if you read the cliff notes of the pyramid.
Well, actually, I'm going to disagree with that.
Okay.
I think you can eat a ton of saturated fat.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's really any limit.
No, I think that too, but I think if they're saying in this document that make sure it's not not over 10%, but then they're also at the same time saying eat all the butter you want, like that's contradictory. I don't agree. I think you can have more than 10%.
Yeah, you can have.
I agree with that, but then don't like say it in the cliff notes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and going to your point, where fat doesn't make you fat, well, the good fat doesn't make you
Yeah.
fat, the saturated. What a lot of people don't know is it makes sense, right? Eating fat, you're going to get fat. But what happens, it's the way the fat is metabolized. So the fat gets turned into ketones. You heard of the ketogenic diet. And ketones is a very clean burning fuel, and you don't have to wind up using a lot of sugar for energy. You wind up using those ketones for energy. Like I gave to your brother, remember that thing I gave you? Athletes now are going on a ketogenic diet and drinking ketones before they go out and run.
This is where we're going to disagree. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So now we've talked about fat. Let's talk about carbohydrates.
Okay.
So
Love me some pasta.
and this is great, and this is the problem.
You guys are going to gang up on me now?
No.
I have to bring in
No.
the guys in here. Too much estrogen.
Let me zoom out a little bit and say this is just the problem of creating a guideline for a huge population of
True.
people. That's the biggest problem, because there's no way they would be able to get it right for every single individual person, because we're all different people and we all have different health needs. So when we think about like this new food pyramid says, okay, well, we're reducing the amount of refined grains in our diet. We should be like paying attention to the amount of like excessive carbohydrates that we're taking in every day, because a majority of Americans are eating too many carbohydrates, and they're insulin resistant, and it leads to metabolic disease. Yeah, true. Like most Americans are eating too high of a carbohydrate diet because they're not moving enough to utilize those carbohydrates, right? But now let's think about athletes that are using this food pyramid, or females or female athletes that are using this food pyramid. And we're seeing, okay, well, you shouldn't be eating that many carbohydrates. But for people that are incredibly physically active, or females that need carbohydrates for good hormone function, like that's not the best advice. That like a female athlete looks very differently and needs a different diet than a sedentary 60-year-old man. So I think there's just not a lot of room for like personalization within the food pyramid. So unless you have a lot of background knowledge on this stuff, you like might end up doing the wrong thing for your body. And that's where I'll argue, I think, and there was a time when I was with you and I thought like I totally limited my carbohydrates and I got super underweight and super sick. And I think it's important for people to know like carbohydrates are not the devil either. Like not one macronutrient is the devil. We need fat, we need carbohydrate, we need protein. And it's all about figuring out what does that ratio look like for your body, for your physiology, for your level of daily activity.
Right. The English bureaucracy, hierarchy one time said you can never be too rich or too thin. You know, the difference is, again, men and women are entirely different. So a man can go down to what they call single ratio body fat, single percentage, and be okay. I don't recommend that, but bodybuilders do that, right, Kate? Single digit.
Yeah.
Women, in my opinion, should not get much below 20%. You should have at least 20% body fat on you. Otherwise, what happens, you're not going to
Bad things happen.
Bad things happen.
It happened to me. It happened to me, Lester. Bad things happen. So at one point I was at a 6% body fat. And I lost all my hormone function, and it was a nightmare. And I totally destroyed my body thinking, because I was following the recommendations that are targeted towards overweight, sedentary men. Like, not the recommendations that I should have been following. So, yeah, I got super sick because I was super lean. And now I'm back to like 20-21% body fat. As
really
females,
good. Yeah.
that's where we should be.
Yeah.
But it's not like the fault of the food pyramid, because it would be impossible to make a pyramid that speaks to everybody individually.
Yeah, everybody, obviously, women and men are entirely different, but just so the audience know, from evolutionary biology, what happens is, contrary to what the media may tell you, men and women are very different, okay?
It's true.
What happens is a woman is really hardwired to have a baby. This goes back to, in the beginning. So what happens if the body fat gets too low, it tells the body, shut down the thyroid, shut down this, because you can't have a baby, Meg, because you're just too thin. So you're going to lose your period because you can't ovulate, because your body's not prepared to have offspring.
Yeah.
That's why you should be at least 20% fat. Whereas the guy, we can't have children, no matter what they tell you, Meg. I can't have a baby. Okay.
Really?
We're going to be banned.
No, I love that we just took a little detour to talk about women's health, because I think that's really important. And a lot of people are just following the stupid things I see on Instagram and TikTok, and they're like, "Oh, that's what I should be doing." It's just wrong. It's just false information. So I think there's a lot of ambiguity around the carbohydrate recommendations on the pyramid.
But again, we're talking about this different kinds. Once you get into different types of carbohydrates, because there's
that's the other thing too. I think a larger problem is people looking at this pyramid just don't have enough nutritional knowledge to really unpack it and understand it and apply it to themselves. I think that's the biggest problem. When we think about America's nutritional problems, they're not because of bad guidelines that were given. Because the problem is that people don't follow any of the guidelines. So that's why I'm wondering if, I'm so happy to see the shift towards a better pyramid, but are things going to change? Are people going to care about this pyramid? Because they didn't care about the last pyramid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, again, I'm glad you brought that up. The problem, you said this, most people don't follow the pyramid anyway. But the reason the pyramid is important is because all of government institutions have to follow that particular pyramid. So in the old days, schools, the kind of thing that's serving at schools, they had to follow which is basically, processed food, carbs, the stuff schools are serving to kids are awful. And also for nursing homes, the military, they have to follow those guidelines.
That's true. That's a really good point, Phil. I think it will, of course, have an impact that way, at least, which is awesome.
I remember the year they took away our chocolate milk in school.
Oh, sad year. Chocolate milk's the best.
It is.
A lot of professional athletes drink chocolate milk.
Chocolate's good for you, magnesium.
Yeah, and they probably replaced the whole milk with 2% milk, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's the same thing.
I wonder if that will. Of course, that will switch now because they're pushing.
No,
for a higher
they already said they're
fat.
going to go back. They're going to go back to whole milk.
Yeah.
I saw a podcast, basically with this woman, and she started this nonprofit to go out to schools and to change the whole school cafeteria. Because over here in Leicester, guys got farms and chickens and cows and all kinds of turkeys running around, right? You got a turkey in your backyard, right? So,
I was going to say, I live in Leicester and I don't have any of those animals on my property.
I'm just making it up.
I've never.
I don't know that that's true.
I got squirrels.
But we are a right to farm town.
So, but they're saying what they're doing is they're going to the local farmers and they're saying, why don't we buy so many eggs from your chickens and this. So you're supporting the local, the local farms and stuff like that into the school. Because right now, the largest supplier of food is Cisco with the S. You see the big trucks running around. They control everything. And what they do is they bring into the school cafeteria this pre-frozen thing already made up somewhere and who knows where with plastic on the top. And what they have microwave ovens. They're putting the plastic in the microwave oven.
So that's not every school. I've worked in a variety of schools, and that's not what happens in every one of them.
You work at the rich schools, that's why.
That's not true. I worked in public school prior to private school, and we had true cafeteria.
They actually made the food from scratch?
Yes.
That's very unusual, though.
It's not that, I don't know. I really think it depends on the school. It depends on the funding that the town has. I think it really depends. But yes, what you're saying, like those horror stories do happen. So hopefully these guidelines will shift those schools
So,
over
Meg,
still.
when you were in school, what was your typical? Now, did you have breakfast there or just lunch?
Well, we had a breakfast cart, but you wouldn't be pleased with what's on it. It had like cinnamon buns and prepackaged muffins and like not your Little Debbie's and your
Cereal boxes.
Yeah.
And what was your typical lunch like?
We never had the same thing twice in 1 week, but they frequently repeated throughout the year. They had like shepherd's pie. We had pizzas. We had, I can hardly remember, beef stroganoff was one of them. We had,
low protein, highly palatable meals.
yeah, things that kids probably wouldn't turn their nose up at because they had to offer us food. And then the kids that back then you had like a card that had your money on it, your lunch money. If you couldn't afford lunch that day, you had cheese slapped between two pieces of bread. I've had that
that's awful.
a couple of times.
A cheese sandwich,
Pretty
not
much.
grilled cheese.
No.
Just a cheese
Yeah.
sandwich.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
Although I will say, when you went through the line, like visually, we didn't have, like, they weren't serving out of a plastic tub. They had the metal, like, serving dishes with the metal ladles and it came in, like, like when you go to weddings and they have
buffet
those
style.
metal- yeah.
Yeah.
They would plate it for us, but it came in those tins.
But I'm assuming they weren't making. And did you go to school in Leicester?
No, I went to Shepherd Hill.
Okay, and I'm assuming that they weren't making that food on site. I'm assuming they probably trucked it in. That's what normally happens.
Probably, yes. I didn't.
It's like, no, when
I
I was in
wouldn't
high
have
school, I
seen
didn't
it,
know
but-
who was bringing in the food. Nobody knows. You just
That's
eat
the
it.
whole idea.
Nobody knows. You just eat it.
Yeah.
It comes from heaven. It comes from heaven.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So
Sometimes, if you couldn't pay for it, they would have PB&J too. I remember that. So.
yeah, a lot of low protein, high sugar options.
In fact, this woman was saying what they had. A lot of kids, the so poor schools, they give the kids breakfast, lunch, and dinner because they couldn't basically.
Yeah, free reduced lunch.
Yeah, but what happens is the food they're giving them is crap. It's one of the reasons why people on the lowest socioeconomic ladder are much sicker, is because they've been fed this stuff over and over again.
This brings me to one last argument that I want to make against the food pyramid. And don't get me wrong, I think the food pyramid's great. I love the new food pyramid. But of course I have to be critical because I love to play devil's advocate. I think the socioeconomic feasibility of the new pyramid is not great. So we're prioritizing at the top of the pyramid grass-fed beef and pasture-raised eggs from Happy Chickens and all these like specialty oils. Like, yeah, in an ideal situation, when you had all the money in the world and access to all of these like, high-quality products, of course that's how we would want to eat, right? But there's majority of us, like, can't afford this stuff. Like, especially with the rising cost of everything, people can't afford grass-fed beef anymore. So, like, yeah, although I would love for everybody to be able to have this stuff, I think it's more important that, like, I wish that the pyramid said, instead of grass-fed beef, we just said, like, red meat's okay, and, like, buy the best quality meat, like, buy local if you can. Not saying, like, demonizing any other meat that's not, like, from happy cows.
This interview I heard with Mark Hyman, he's the functional medicine head at Cleveland Clinic, and he had the woman on the show with the nonprofit. They went out to schools and specifically worked with the school and said, this is what you do, this is how you get local farmers. And they said that argument is presented a lot with your argument. I hear this all the time. I hear it from clients all the time. I can't afford to eat healthy. You know, I hear that all the time. And they came up very specific meals that would be like, you know, very, very affordable if you put it together. So I think with the
like I'm not the richest person in the world, but I'll buy, for example, I buy like really good quality ground beef. Like I can't afford to eat steak every day, but trying to, you know, figure out from my budget what's the best bang for my buck gonna be. But I don't think there's like enough information out there. I think people don't understand
But
it.
I think another thing you need the, you know, the holistic nutritionist person in there that can maybe figure this stuff out, how to make it affordable. I think that's the big thing.
I mean, that's the deeper societal problem.
And it used to be on the SNAP program that if you went to a local farmer's market, you would get twice as much. That's another way is to incentivize, because what is it, like 90% of Coke is all bought by people on SNAP programs.
Yeah.
Because that's what they can afford. So maybe if RFK or whatever the powers to be over there, if they could turn around and say, okay, if you buy this, we could give you, you know, more bang for your buck by buying the healthier food, and not doing so much with the Coke and stuff like that.
I feel like sometimes people get, when you're talking about the money part of food and purchasing food in a market, people sometimes see the word organic, which is going to be your more expensive stuff because it just has that word on there.
Which doesn't mean anything. We'll disagree on this all
Yeah.
day. But it's true. Most products just slap the word organic on something, and truly there's no different from the like organic yogurt that you're buying versus like the non-organic yogurt. But people think, oh, I can't afford the best of the best, so they're like, why am I going to try it all?
The environmental work group has something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So not all.
I knew you were going to bring this up.
So not.
Fine.
So not all of it has to be organic. The ones that are really, really bad, like blueberries, you like wild blueberries. There's something that there's a lot of.
I eat regular, non-organic blueberries.
And you're gonna die.
And I'm going to die.
So it depends. But again, you can pick and you can choose your battles. I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
So I mean, and the other one is again with cauliflower. I looked it up. Cauliflower doesn't have to be organic, so I can get onions don't have to be.
The
organic.
Google machine told you that onions don't have to be
And you
organic.
better believe what the Google tells you.
You always have to believe what the Google tells you. Or just what Phil George tells you.
Just believe me.
Always. But yeah.
So the whole point is, we both agree. Overall, it's good.
Yes.
The other thing, what I sometimes
It's a step in the right direction, is what I'll say.
yeah, because it can be.
We have a lot more work to do.
It can be a lot of different problems. So we have a minute left. You want to close with anything, Meg?
Well, I definitely learned a lot of stuff today. I learned that, I am one person who has heard many times that you can't eat a lot of pasta, and don't eat a lot of butter. So a lot of the things that I've been told throughout my life has been either dispelled or backed up through this conversation. So
Good to know. Finishing notes.
I don't have finishing notes. I'll just say I think I was so psyched when I saw the new food pyramid, and although, I play devil's advocate, and there were a couple things I'd like to see different, I think this is a huge step in the right direction.
Okay, great. Okay, guys, thanks so much for tuning in with us. If you have any questions, Meg, you want to give out your phone number, your address?
No, I'm all set.
So you email me, philgeorge@charter.net. And if you want to come on the show and, share your story, if you have a health story, you want to just come on the show and have a good time. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Bye.
One of the most common questions I'm asked as a biochemist and health coach is, what are the best supplements to take? Choosing supplements is a tricky business. Many companies have poor quality control and questionable ingredients. In the past, I had to send clients to several different websites. I am now able to offer one-stop shopping for all the quality brands I recommend with no shipping cost and a lower price in most cases. Just email me, philgeorge@charter.net, for a free consult.